Good morning, everyone. I'm Chris Nida with the League of Municipalities. I'm very happy to be here with you this morning. I parked over at the convention center and was wandering around there, and all the doors were locked and it was very dark. And I was very worried that I had missed my time or had something wrong, but made my way back through the Riverwalk and I'm here. So I'm happy to be up in front of you and happy that everyone is here. Like I said, I'm from the League of Municipalities. I'm the Director of Research on our Government Affairs staff. I'm just going to talk kind of from a general legislative perspective about some of the issues that we're facing as a League of Municipalities. I have some slides in here about some county issues as well, which I am obviously less versed on, but Kevin is here and we'll be talking later, and I'm sure we'll elaborate on anything I say or correct anything that I missed say. But I'll just jump right into kind of the legislative issues and sort of what we are working on from a league perspective and where we're at. From a calendar standpoint, I always hesitate to say this out loud, so we may be getting close to the end of the legislative session, or close-ish at least. The goal is always in the long session in the odd number of years here to come in and pass a budget. The Senate has passed its version of the budget. Just yesterday, the House started rolling out pieces of its budget. We'll apparently get a full budget from the House with all the finance packages and the tax changes and the pay raises and such that they're proposing next week. I think the goal is for the House to have their version of the budget passed by this time next week probably. Once the Senate and the House have each passed their version of the budget, all that's left to do is come together and negotiate something final that can be passed for the state for the next 2 years, and then they'll more or less be ready to go. Now, negotiating a compromise between the two is probably, it's easy for me to stand up here and say that that's all that has to be done. That's usually the hardest thing that they do every legislative session, but they're at least at the point where they agree on the total amount of money that they're spending, and have some differences to be sure, but have some commonalities as well. So we'll see. So it could be another month, it could be another 2 months. But we may be approaching at least closer to the end than the beginning. At least I hope I can safely say that. As of earlier this week, we took a look at the numbers. There have been, I think, 1,597 bills filed this year, which is about standard for a session in an unnumbered year. And there have been, I think, 14 laws passed. So out of 1,600 bills, only 14 have actually made it to the point of passing both chambers and being signed by the governor. So I'm sure there's a lot more that they want to get done, and so if they're going to do all that in another month, I'm sure it will be a busy few weeks ahead here for both my organization and the counties and everybody who has a vested interest in this. Talking from a budget perspective, the Senate, as I said, passed its full budget, has rolled out everything that it's going to include. Both the House and the Senate agree on this $22.9 billion number, about a 2.5% increase over the current budget. That proposal cuts the personal and corporate income tax rate, increases the standard deduction, and provides raises for teachers and more money to the rainy day fund. So they do have a budget surplus of around $550, $600 million, I think, right now. And from a Senate perspective, they want to put most of that money either into the rainy day fund or put it toward more tax cuts for the citizens of North Carolina. From a local government perspective, some of the things that we're happy about that's in there, really as a league, we were very happy with a lot of what was in the Senate budget. There's an additional $150 million in there for disaster relief related to Hurricane Matthew and the wildfires that we had last year. There's a coastal storm damage mitigation fund. I know for our members on the coast down here in this area, beach renourishment and coastal mitigation is always a major issue. And so there is a new fund created as part of the Senate budget that would help with those sorts of needs. And there's a pilot program for a few different cities, including the city of Wilmington, for a quick response team in response to the opioid crisis and the folks who have suffered from opiate and heroin overdose down here. So that is a significant project as well. There's more money for the broadband infrastructure office, and I think both Kevin and I will talk about broadband a little bit later, but there's additional money in for that office in the Senate budget. There is a Additional $15 million for film and entertainment grant funds. Again, an issue that's very significant to people down in this area. Additional money for that film fund. And then something that I think I've talked to folks from this organization about before. Some of you may remember 2 years ago, as part of the 2015 state budget, there were budget transparency requirements implemented as part of that budget. At least the way the law was written, there were going to be requirements that both the state and all local governments in the state be published on their website, sort of down to the vendor level spending for every item, for every department in their budget, publish that on their website, update it monthly, and then upload it to the state. And so that the state would compile all the information from all the different budgets from all the local governments around the state and put it in a compiled comparison form so that presumably somebody could go onto the internet, call up, I don't know what, spending on pencils or something in the classroom and look at what every different government around the state is spending on that as a monthly basis. There was $800,000 appropriated for this effort in 2015 statewide for the state and all local governments. And so what the Office of State Budget and Management and the Chief Information Officer did at that time was do some work on a state level, compile information that was already available, but they didn't put a lot of emphasis on the local government portion of it just because it was so unwieldy and such a massive requirement for all of our members. The members of the state legislature haven't forgotten about that because there's new language about those budget transparency requirements in the Senate budget requiring a detailing of how that $800,000 was spent, what efforts have gone into complying with the law. But from a municipal perspective, the language in the Senate budget at least specifies that counties and school districts will need to comply with those requirements, but it exempts municipalities from complying with those requirements. Says that municipalities are encouraged to comply with the law, but not required. So, you know, as an organization that represents 553 municipalities ranging in size from 800,000 people in Charlotte to 12 people in Fontana Dam, or they might have 15 now, I'm not sure exactly what the last census count was, but we think that it was going to be really difficult to comply with those requirements, and so I think we'd be supportive of that language in the Senate budget. But the House has a little bit of different language in their budget, so we'll have to see what kind of conclusion they arrive, compromise they arrive at together. I borrowed some of these slides from the county commissioners, and like I said, I'm sure Kevin can elaborate more and talk more about what I'm about to say. There is a reduction to LME MCO funding in the Senate budget. Some pretty significant HHS changes. I know there was a proposal to consolidate county DSSS, just to do a presentation with the county folks. I'm talking to them about this issue over the years. I know DSS is always a significant area of focus. There is a proposal in there that's also in a couple pieces of legislation that would consolidate county DSS offices into 30 regional entities over a five-year period of time. School board lawsuit authority, again, that's repealing the ability of school boards to sue counties regarding their level of funding that they're provided, and new Medicaid eligibility accuracy oversight, and that would eventually require a county payback of Medicaid claims if there was inaccurate eligibility determined. So again, something from a county perspective to be very aware of. Raise the age is something that I think both of our organizations are supportive of. You know, I think I hope I don't misstate anything talking off the cuff up here, but North Carolina is either the only state in the nation or one of the only states in the nation to treat 16 and 17-year-olds as adults when they commit certain crimes. And so there's been a push to get us more in line with other states around the country and require 18 years of age to be tried in adult court. So there is some changes to that policy in the Senate budget. It would apply to misdemeanors only, and there's no funding in there for those new cases that would be tried in juvenile court. Again, I feel bad talking about this with Kevin in the audience. I just stole these slides, and this is really your area of expertise. But just, you know, from a county perspective, Top things that they're working for this year: school capital. Obviously, funding for school capital around the state, there's a great deal of need and a shortage in what has been provided at the state level, and so there's legislation and provisions in the Senate budget out there to approach funding for school capital in multiple different ways, whether it be through a state bond, through increasing lottery advertising and using those increased funds from the lottery devoted to school capital, and providing more sales tax flexibility, so that if a county wanted to levy an additional sales tax and get that passed by a referendum of the voters, that any county could use those proceeds for school capital. Again, I mentioned lawsuits and the ability of school boards to sue counties regarding funding levels. Revenue flexibility, again, goes back to that sales tax revenue flexibility for school capital I just mentioned, and I'll talk a little bit more about Senate Bill 126 in just a moment. Transportation funding is something where I think both of our organizations agree that we'd like to see more local input and more funding from the state level for transportation needs all across the state. And again, raise the age I just mentioned. The House has been a little bit more aggressive, I think I can say, than the Senate on that front, raising the age of juvenile jurisdiction for 16 and 17-year-olds. And so the Senate took some steps, like I mentioned, to that regard in the state budget, and the House may end up going a little farther. From our perspective, we've made the league, in response to kind of concerns from its members and feedback from our members, has really tried to narrow down our advocacy goals and what we're focusing on at the General Assembly. And so we've really been focusing on economic development, the types of investments that cities make to grow jobs and foster the business economy in their jurisdiction. Stabilizing municipal finances, we'd like to see more options for raising revenue at the local level, so it doesn't always fall back on the municipal property tax when it comes time to provide more services. And again, infrastructure, whether that's water and sewer or transportation funding. These are really three of the top priorities for us. And so one of the ways that we're looking to address those concerns and respond to what our members want is House Bill 900, which we call the State Infrastructure and Low Property Tax Act. I wish it had a cool acronym, but I'm just going to go with that nice name, such as it is. The bill would give municipalities the option to hold a referendum locally for one of three different revenue sources, whether that's a local occupancy tax, a prepared meals tax, or a quarter-cent sales tax. It just goes back to the city that levies it. Again, it would have to be a referendum for voters. They can only adopt one of the three. You can't do all three. You have to choose the one that's best for your community. And all the proceeds would have to be spent on public infrastructure and facilities or economic development. Again, as a way to address those member concerns about revenue-raising options at the local level. And again, it would have to be put before a vote of the people. We're very cognizant that this is something local elected officials would have to choose, and they would have to put it to a referendum. So it's not something you could just do by a council resolution. We're hopeful the bill will get heard here in the next couple of weeks, making its way through the House. And obviously have to go over to the Senate, but this is a significant advocacy goal for our members and something that we've really been working hard on. I mentioned Senate Bill 126, the sales tax changes. Some of you may recall 2 years ago there was a really significant discussion about reallocating local sales taxes, about distributing, whether they're distributed on the basis of where a sale actually occurs or the percentage of your population statewide. I would have to get really down into the weeds to explain exactly how all this bill works, and I doubt anybody wants me to do that on a Friday morning, but there's a portion of the local sales tax that's currently adjusted, so it's multiplied by a factor that's just written into statute. So Dare County, just for instance, their portion of this sales tax is multiplied by 1.47, so they get a more heavily weighted share of it. Columbus County is multiplied by a factor of 0.81, so they get sort of 81 cents on the dollar from this 1/2 cent portion of the sales tax. There's a proposal out there to get rid of all those adjustment factors and put in some new adjustment factors based on what economic development tier you're in. And the bottom line, the thrust of all this, is that it again moves sales tax money around in the state so that some counties and cities would see reductions in their sales tax revenues and others would see an increase. Particularly if you're in one of those lower economic development tiers, it would have a higher adjustment factor. Brunswick County is one of those that would go from a higher adjustment factor to a lower adjustment factor, so they would lose about $2.5 million between the county and all the cities therein. So this bill passed the Senate. It hasn't been heard in the House yet. We had members of the coastal communities this week talking about this bill. I don't know what its prospects will be in the House, but again, from a league perspective, and I think we share this with the county to some extent, we're always looking for solutions that float all boats, that can help everybody, that provide everybody with additional revenue and revenue options without creating a system of quote-unquote winners and losers, where some people see their revenues reduced and others see their revenues increased. So that's a pretty significant one for us. Impact fees is another major issue. I don't know how many of you were involved in the utility side of your operation, but we had a Supreme Court case last year that we think has the potential to invalidate these fees that a lot of utilities charge around the state to help pay for growth. Some people call them impact fees, some people call them system development fees, some people call them capacity fees, whatever they're called. They're potentially jeopardized by the Supreme Court ruling last year that says that cities and counties can't charge fees for any services that can be provided in the future. So a lot of these impact fees are charged, when new development comes online, there's a new fee paid to help fund the extra capacity demanded by the system or the extra strain put on the system by this new development. These fees would potentially be eliminated by this court case. And so we've been working to preserve that authority. And the other piece of it that we're really concerned about is that the court, currently, this has been appealed to the Supreme Court, so it's not final yet, but the appeals court ruling currently is that any developer who's paid these fees and believe they paid an illegal fee can come back and request repayment from the city or county, and they would have to repay the fees they collected for the past 10 years. So 10 years worth of repayment. We've heard from certain small towns and certain growing high development areas, this could potentially be tens of millions of dollars, and with the potential to have a really significant impact on municipal finances. And I think we're talking about potential repayment that outstrips some of what our communities have in fund balance. And so hopefully all these developers won't come asking for these fees back, but we are working extremely hard at the legislature and through the courts, quite frankly, to get this these 10 years worth of repayments shortened to a more appropriate time and preserve this authority to collect these fees going forward, because without the ability to collect these fees, either rates are going to have to go up significantly for existing ratepayers, or growth is just going to have to slow down significantly. I don't think either of those scenarios is one that either us or the developers want. And so hopefully we can reach some agreement on this before the end of the legislative session. Municipal elections is something that we certainly heard about from your elected officials, even if we don't maybe hear quite as much about it from staff from time to time. But there are different proposals to kind of standardize the municipal election schedule in the state, move it all to even number of years. One proposal that would make all elections in the state, including municipal elections, held on a partisan basis. The vast majority of our municipalities at this point are held on a nonpartisan basis. So between these two bills, they have the potential to move everyone to an even numbered year and make them all run on a partisan basis. I think that probably the even numbered years portion of it has more traction at the legislature than the partisan portion of it right now, but we would, I think just in general, I can say from a league perspective, we're always about preserving municipal authority and the ability to choose whatever area it is, whatever is most appropriate to you at the local level. And so we'd love to be able to preserve the ability to hold municipal elections in whichever year you want to, and either bipartisan or nonpartisan, and leave that up to the local level rather than having that mandated by the state. So that is something else that we are working on. From a land use perspective, House Bill 310, wireless communications infrastructure siting. I don't know how many, probably almost everybody in the room is more familiar with this 5G wireless technology that they're talking about rolling out than I am. But what I know about it, just from a league perspective, is that the way House Bill 310 was filed basically would have overridden any kind of zoning or any other authority for municipalities to decide where some of this wireless infrastructure would go. And so I have a picture of it up there that was provided to us. My understanding is that for this 5G wireless technology to work, this sorts of technology that you see up there, these kind of pole attachments and these I don't even know what you call the boxes that are down there, they're about the size of a refrigerator, would have to be repeated about every 300 to 500 feet in neighborhoods and business districts throughout the state. And again, the way House Bill 310 was filed, basically would have overridden any zoning controls or any local control that your local government would have as to where this goes, how many of them, those sorts of things. So our advocacy team has been in heavy negotiations about this bill. We think we have the zoning piece worked out. We're more or less neutral on the bill the way it sits now. We're still trying to negotiate some additional changes to make sure that our local governments have some control over where this technology goes, excuse me, and how it gets rolled out. But that's a pretty significant one for us from a land use perspective. Permitting efficiency, I don't know how many folks in here are involved in permitting. This is one, again, that we're working on. I think the way I understand the goal of House Bill 794 was to move everybody in the state to the state, counties, local governments, everybody to one common permitting software that everybody could use to do. I hear the chuckles already. I understand the goal of efficiency. I sort of think about it from a budget transparency standpoint. I've heard some of the horror stories about just giving multiple departments within the same jurisdiction the ability to get on the same software. And so the way it's written, at least, has some very aspirational goals, I would say, but we're going to work on that if it ends up moving to try to make sure we do this in a realistic way and it's actually a law that you're able to comply with at the local level. Billboards is something that we've been working on pretty heavily this week. I think there's been multiple billboard bills filed, but House Bill 581 is the one that is moving and that we're working on. This is really more of a zoning issue, but the way it stands now would, if a billboard had to be relocated because of some kind of road project, would basically be allowed to relocate with anywhere else in the county or city based on zoning district, and would really increase the level of compensation. You'd have to take into effect potential income that could be derived from the billboard down throughout the years. When you're talking about compensating a company for movement or taking down a billboard, a similar law in Minnesota resulted in the state, I think, paying around $4.3 million for one single billboard that was taken down as a result of a road project. So again, that's something we're working on significantly to try to make sure that municipalities have the authority to control where these billboards go and have some continued authority about them. Other land use issues. Land use, I'll be honest with you, I should have said this up top. I mainly work on the finance and tax issues. I'm not an attorney. We have some very capable land use attorneys on staff, and so we get into these zoning issues. I get a little bit out of my depth. There's a lot of discussion about performance guarantees, both from a city and county perspective, and what we can require from developers in that regard. Bills filed about sweepstakes, and I know I see questions on listservs and those sorts of things from time to time. Hey, a sweepstakes business is opening up again. I thought those were banned. I know there's a lot of discussion going on with local district attorneys about the state of that law. Those bills have not moved yet, so I don't know that we necessarily anticipate any legislative action, but that discussion remains out there. Infrastructure funding is one that I did want to talk about again. One of both of myself and the county is the goals for this year. I think Kevin will talk a little bit more about broadband. House Bill 68, the Bright Futures Act. We have a goal with that bill to get to a point where local governments may be able to engage in some sort of public-private partnership regarding fiber with private industries. If you have dark fiber out there, that make sure you have explicit authority to lease that to private sector so that you can partner with the industry to bring those services to your community. Again, a goal for the counties of public infrastructure, a P3 with private internet providers, and some legislation, House Bill 390 and Senate Bill 208 that are out there to help counties with bringing that internet infrastructure to their communities. I won't say much about occupancy and sales taxes. There have been different proposals to modify the occupancy tax. There's going to be a special subcommittee in the Senate to deal with those occupancy tax rules so that you may be able to use occupancy tax proceeds not just for promoting the services that you have in your community, but being able to spend on some capital projects and tourism-related projects that will help help you allow you to build something that you can promote with some of these occupancy tax funds. Open government, some bills filed regarding public records and open meetings that you'll see. I don't know that any of those have moved so far. We are very interested, along with the counties, in House Bill 432 and specifically Senate Bill 343, which would allow local governments to publish their required public notices electronically on their websites. We always get a lot of pushback from the newspaper industry, the press association on these sorts of bills, but I think we firmly believe that as newspaper readership drops and as more and more people are turning to the internet for all their information, that requiring local governments to publish these legally required notices, which I don't know how many people are going to the newspaper to find these different required notices in the first place are, but to allow you to publish these notices somewhere prominent on your website and not require you to purchase advertising space in the local newspaper anytime that you're going to publish one of these notices. So Senate Bill 343 is moving. There's some kind of county pieces of it that would allow counties to generate a little bit of revenue, I think, from publishing these notices and devote that to teacher supplements. So just be aware that that's moving, and if we were able to get that passed in the General Assembly, there could be additional requirements for your local websites in terms of publishing these notices. Again, a county goal as well. And so Senate Bill 343 has passed the Senate. We'll be working on that and trying to get that through the House as well. Intergovernmental agreements, some of this is related to the disasters I mentioned from last year. House Bill 257 is one, it's a local bill. We don't always get really involved in local bills. We were a little concerned about the precedent for that. It would require any municipality that enters into an agreement with a separate county to go to their county commissioner and get approval for that contract before they enter into that contract. So we're a little concerned about the precedent that might set of requiring municipalities to go to their county commission and ask permission for something that they have decided that they want to do on a local level. And so that's a local bill that we're certainly going to be monitoring for the rest of the session. A couple property tax issues. One was regarding property tax relief, but I think through the good work of the counties and lobbying by our members and our advocacy team, any additional property tax exemption there is going to be held harmless by the state, at least the way that it stands right now. So that's a good one. That's House Bill 2, but not the House Bill 2. This is the new House Bill 2. So I'll have to go through this numbering thing for the next couple sessions, I think. Senate Bill 363 hasn't moved yet, and that's good news, but that would have been a serious upheaval in the property tax assessment and levying process. A couple utility issues that we're monitoring. House Bill 275 would exempt airports from paying stormwater fees, which for some of our municipalities with significant airports within their jurisdictions would be a pretty significant loss in revenue. And we worry that if airports are exempted from paying stormwater fees, who might be the next group to come and try to get out of paying these fees? And so we're always worried about the precedent in that regard. House Bill 718 is a study that also showed up in the House budget regarding studying local water and sewer rates and the process for setting those, and whether there needs to be additional oversight on how utilities set their rates. We're always concerned about additional approval and anything that would give an additional administrative burden to our members. Retirement, there's been a lot of discussion about retirement. I mentioned Senate Bill 467 down at the bottom, North Carolina retirement reform. That was discussed in a committee but not voted on and has not moved forward yet. But that was a proposal that as of July 1st, 2018, would essentially end the state and local pension systems for any new retirees. Anybody that's in the system would continue to accrue service and could retire under the retirement system the way it's currently set up now. So congratulations, you all are in, you are safe. But as of July 1st, 2018, any new hires would be put into a defined contribution program, more like a private 401k, which could eventually increase costs on the pension system if we're still paying out pensions but not bringing anybody new into the system. So we'll certainly be involved if there are any major reforms to the retirement system like that proposed. Sanctuary cities is a hot national topic. I don't know that we continue to believe that we don't have any sanctuary cities in North Carolina, at least the way they're currently defined, but they are looking at putting some additional kind of punishments in their revenue withholdings for any anybody that would be found to be violating those statutes. Economic development, again, some changes to the way that incentives are done in the state and how they rank counties from a economic prosperity perspective. Police bills, maybe some changes to the body cam law. I saw that there was some money for grants for purchasing body cams at the local level in the House budget that was rolled out this week. So we're going to be tracking that as well. And the environment, I don't know if there's anything particularly applicable to people in this room, but again, just to kind of give you a sense of the number of different bills that we try to track from a municipal perspective. Testing requirements for lead and where that burden might fall, who's required to perform the testings and those sorts of things. And code enforcement, again, we did have two bills filed about the regulation of autonomous vehicles, but that has not gone anywhere yet, but maybe sort of setting the groundwork for something we might see in the years to come. So I'm going to end it there and make sure I leave plenty of time for the counties to talk. If you're not getting our legislative bulletin, we'd be happy, email me or give me your card. I'd be happy to put you on your mailing list if you just want to know what we're doing and what happens at the legislature on a weekly basis. We'd be happy to get that to you. And if you want to get involved in any way in lobbying or any of our committees, we always love to have you. We have a regulatory action committee that deals with regulatory affairs at the state level, so please just let me know if you're interested in being more involved in the league. I'm happy to take any questions at this point about anything I did or did not talk about, but we can save it to the end as well. If not, I think I'll go ahead and turn it over to Donald or Kevin. But thank you very much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Good morning. It's great to be here in a suit at the beach in a ballroom with you good people. Tell you what, how about this? All right, I'll loosen it up. There we go. That feels a lot better. I walked in and the first person I sat down with was Joel Hartley from Davidson County. I grew up in Davidson County, so it was good to gravitate towards Davidson County people. So it's good to see you, Joel. So thanks for having us. Donovan and I are going to split up our time here a little bit this morning, and we're going to. Are we set? Okay, ready to go. Good. We're going to talk a little bit first about something that both the League of Municipalities and the Association of County Commissioners experienced over the past couple of months, are still experiencing, and that's the fire at our offices. So we wanted to give you an update about that, and I asked Donald to talk to you all about sort of some of the things, lessons learned by us that maybe we hopefully can impart. I hope you never ever have to go through something like this, but there were now some lessons learned about IT issues and making sure that you have continuity of services and operations, which I know you all care deeply about. So I'm going to turn it over to Donald to show a video, and then we'll follow through on some of our other stuff.
Good morning, everyone. As Kevin said, I'm going to just kind of summarize what we encountered with this fire. I'm going to start off with videos about 3.5 minutes. It's actually really, really good. And then we're going to have some pictures just to kind of give you an idea of the size of this fire that happened. So I'm going to try to get the video.
Commissioners' offices located in the Albert Coast Local Government Center and the Quorum Center in Wake County. The fire would move for more than an hour before it was contained, and significant damage was sustained. Gratefully, no major injuries were reported, thanks to an incredible emergency response effort by Wake County, City of Raleigh, and surrounding area fire and police first responders. Accounts from that night say flames from the fire towered several stories above the 15-story Quorum Center, which is across the street from the construction site of the Metropolitan apartment complex that burned. The complex was about half finished at the time of the blaze. Some first responders said the heat could be felt blocks away from the fire, and nearly every building within a block of the fire sustained some level of damage. The fire made national news shows the following morning. The local media reported that this fire was the largest blaze and the first five-alarm fire in Raleigh in nearly a century. NCACC offices located in the Quorum Center sustained some fire damage in the form of shattered windows and melted computer monitors on the side facing the fire, as well as significant smoke and water damage throughout. The Code Center incurred water and smoke damage, as well as some fire damage to the roof and windows on the League of Municipalities side of the building. The NCACC staff, after catching its collective breath on that Friday morning, immediately began the process of getting association operations back on track. The management team met in a nearby restaurant on Friday, and communications with staff and the NCACC Board of Directors was handled via email, mobile phone, and text messages as everyone was updated on the situation and the next steps were discussed. Some staff continued to work from home over the next week, and others worked from a Wake County Library location as efforts began to find a new space to operate went on. Restoration efforts also began as the removal of salvageable contents of the two offices got underway. Restoration companies removed and cleaned everything from furniture to computer equipment to meeting minutes and right down to the association seal that was on the wall in the Albert Coates building. After a number of offers to help were received, including office space and assistance of all kinds, such as Wake County offering a space they had available, the NCACC settled on a temporary office location at 353 Six Forks Road, Suite 300, Raleigh, North Carolina, due in large part to the fact that the owner was willing to work with the association on a short-term lease for a furnished space with network connectivity built into the space, a combination that would allow staff to get operations back up to speed as quickly as possible. Over the following weeks, association staff has continued to work diligently to get operations up and running and back to 100%. With the new temporary office space identified and leased in just over a week after the fire, and staff having moved years' worth of files, as well as equipment and furniture with the help of the restoration companies, the recovery efforts were underway with very little delay. Although confronted with significant challenges from an unanticipated situation, the NCACC team did a remarkable job of coming together and working hard to make sure that our members have been served throughout this process.
So, a show of hands, how many people prior to today heard about this fire? How many of you knew that it affected the league and association? So yeah, I'm just going to kind of go through some of these pictures here. This is a little different than the video. This is actually still fairly early on in the blaze. It's right at the top of the 5th story of this building so far. In front of you, off to the right, you see the building. That's one of the league's buildings. It had some pretty significant damage. Fire, not just water, but fires. This is a different vantage point. The tall building on the right is the Forum Center, and you can see the blaze is actually starting to get going pretty good. And this one here, you can see the very tip top of the Quorum Center. And as you can see, 15-story Quorum Center, the flames are over top of it at this point. This is a view from our Capitol room. Many of you have probably been there before in the Quorum Center. This was a day after, and it's so strange to see because my office overlooked this apartment complex, and the day before it was just thousands and thousands of 2x4s. Here's the next day. You can kind of see in the middle. You can see a crane melted, fell over. We were fortunate that did not hit any. It would hit a small building. Very one-story building, but it could have been a lot worse. And this is another view of the Quorum Center. You can see all the buildings around. And some of you may know Glenn Gurton, Director of Technology Services for the Association. That's actually him standing in his office window the next morning. Somehow he weaseled his way into the building that morning. I was turned away. I tried to get in there. They said, no, you can't do that. Actually, I think he was on the phone with Kevin at the time. So basically what I'm here to say is just kind of walk you through what we went through from an IT perspective and as an association as a whole. Obviously, the next morning, we quickly realized that we weren't going to be able to get into any of our office space. We were not going to be able to work in there for quite some time. Early estimates are 12 to 18 months right now. People could not get their computers, couldn't get their files, couldn't get their personal belongings. We were just kind of shut out of, what we felt like was our home. We just kind of turned away and said, sorry, not yet. We did not have any phone or email communications at the time. We weren't really sure why. We were, worst thoughts were our data center had been damaged. Essentially, all business came to a halt for a few days. Once we got access to the building, we walked through and found that water damage was everywhere, not just our floor, but from the top of the building all the way to the ground level. Our hallway going to the back of the building had a couple inches of water in it. The ceiling tiles were caved in, and right over top was some PCs and monitors. Glenn and I immediately ran to the data center, and fortunately, it was unharmed. I mean, nothing. There was no smoke smell, there was no water. Partly due to there was no sprinklers in there, obviously. But we have a concrete seal or a concrete ceiling, so no water is able to get through. But the reason we had no communication was the power to the ISP's core routers were down, so we had no internet access at the time. And then obviously we ran around trying to figure out, what was damaged and what could we use, how much were we looking at replacing. And I say we, but Glenn worked with the fire department and the electricians in the building, just begging and pleading to get power restored to those routers so we could at least be back online. They agreed after a few days, so at this point, hey, everything's up and running. The difference is we just physically couldn't be in our office space. And that was a challenge. We had most of our staff continued to work from home. Some worked in public libraries, but a lot of these folks had never worked away from an office. So it took some time to get them acclimated to that and get them up and running. We decided to forward all incoming calls to each staff member, either their home or their cell phone, for probably 2 weeks. I think that's what it was. That was interesting for them as well. Fortunately, 3 weeks prior to this fire, we had rolled out Citrix ShareFile to our users. So even before we got our data center back online, they were able to work from home and access other files over the web. And to this day, we are in a new space, about 5 miles away, but our data center is still running, and we're connecting back to it. Again, we were very fortunate. This could be a totally different story, as you are aware, if something happened at the data center. So basically, I'm just kind of here to say, we were in this boat. We would have never thought in a million years this could happen to us. So just remember, this can't happen to any one of us. And I know most of us here have some sort of DR plan, DR site. It's one thing to have those things. It's something else to be prepared to get those up and running. So I guess I'm just saying, kind of practice those occasionally. Run through a simulated disaster. Get your DR site up and running as your primary system. That way, if something does ever happen, that you're more prepared for it, and you don't have to kind of wing it as it goes along. So, but again, this could have been a totally different story had our data center gone under. That's really all I have. Just wanted to kind of share. I figured the video and pictures are going to be the most interesting part of this whole thing. But if there's any questions, I'd be glad to take them.
Any questions for Don?
So you just don't have a inside phone?
We did not. We've talked about it for quite a while, and again, we were in that mindset of, maybe next year. It's what's the likelihood of it happening to us, sort of thing.
We're going to have one now?
Yeah. We're working with a partner to try to host some of their stuff in our data center and vice versa, so we'll have some sort of site up and running. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. And I just, in front of this group, want to brag on Donald and Glenn. And I know many of you know Glenn Gerton. And I was on the phone with him. I was on the roof of the Codes building assessing the burned roof damage. and I was talking to Glenn, and we were talking about continuity of services and operations, and I said, "Where are you?" And he was like, "I'm in my office." I was like, "How did you get in there?" And I looked up, and so we were like talking to each other. And yes, he found his way inside to do that, to check on the servers. It's interesting to me that that server room, which is encased in concrete and steel on the 5th floor, it never lost operational status. It was the power going into the building that shut us outside communications down, and I'm like, gosh, we thought we prepared enough for everything, but you just can't. You cannot prepare enough. And even then, when you think you have to be prepared for unexpected issues and just kind of take them as they come along. So I would encourage you to, I know this organization has done a lot of things about just disaster preparedness, but I would encourage you to do more of it and think it through. And please call Donald and Glenn for any lessons learned from our experience, because we're happy to share that. So I'd like to thank personally. So I'll transition now and talk a little bit about legislative issues. I think Chris did an excellent job, so I'm not going to repeat, or I could repeat the whole presentation again. I know y'all would appreciate that. I will not do that. But I will say this at the beginning. I want to thank you for the work that you do in your cities and your counties across this state. I don't know that you get thanked enough for what you do. Oftentimes, especially in the areas of information technology, you're kind of working behind the scenes a lot, not until there's a fire, or not until there's an emergency, or when the system goes down and then your phones light up and everybody's calling on, hey, I can't do what I need to do. So to me, the unsung heroes, a lot of the times behind the scenes doing the work that allows county officials, city officials to do what it is that they do. And there are people in this state every day that don't understand that you're doing what you do, and they are getting the services that they need. Sometimes they're getting services they don't even realize they're getting as residents and citizens of North Carolina that our local governments are providing. And I'm here to say thank you on behalf of the County Commissioners Association for all of the work that you do. IT issues do not work from 8 to 5. Sometimes they start at 3 in the morning when something goes wrong, or you have to get into the office. And I know this very well because this is my father's career. He worked in IT. He was an IT systems manager for a private company in Winston-Salem. He continues this work for a private company, an aerospace company. And so if I had a nickel for every time that he left before I was awake, or he was up at 2 working until 9 the next night trying to solve an IT issue, we would be really rich. But we're not. So the personal sacrifices that you make for your family, I know very well, and I really appreciate that. Legislative stuff. So budget timeline, Chris talked about the timeline. So the House budget's coming out this week, actually this week and next week. So now we're getting into the heart of summer. And I was speaking with a member of the Senate last night, and the House budget is significantly different from the Senate budget, which may mean a long summer. I tend to believe they're going to work it out and get done by July 1st, by the end of the fiscal year. I'm always optimistic about that. But there are some significant differences in the House and the Senate budget. So I would just be, on cautious territory about giving advice on the timeline there. One thing I will mention, though, is I had lunch yesterday with the state budget director, and something I think that's not being talked a lot about at the moment, because there are supermajorities in both the House and the Senate, but the governor still plays a role in the budget process and has a role in the legislative process, meaning he has a veto. So it's questionable as to whether or not the House and the Senate are going to put enough things in the budget that will allow the governor to sign the budget. So that could extend the process of the budget just as well. Now, I said that there are supermajorities in both the House and the Senate, so it could be overridden. If there's anything that can galvanize the House and the Senate, it's probably a veto by the governor that will act to force them to override that veto. But he is a player in the process, and a significant one at that, and I think that he gets overlooked. And it's not just because of the political party nature of what's going on right now. Oftentimes, the governor gets overlooked in the budgetary process because that's the key role of the legislature. So I would just bring your awareness to that and keep an eye on information or language coming out of the governor's office as well. Broadband, which again Chris covered, but I do want to mention this, that from the county's perspective, we would ask that you pay attention to House Bill 390 and Senate Bill 208. There's the Bright Futures Act, I believe that's the title of it, which is 68. Is that House Bill 68? House Bill 68? We're concentrating on the other, because that's the bill that would allow counties the authority to, as Chris was talking about, give counties the authority to get more engaged on building infrastructure for digital infrastructure and partnering with the private sector to light up the fiber. The telecom industry has traditionally pushed back on this. I feel like we've been getting a little extra push this session, but it's stalled right now, and I think it's because of the timing of the budget. But I get dismayed and I get a little aggravated by the telecoms because it becomes a competition issue. They view the local governments, and particularly I would say the cities, because they ventured into this area and then got pushed back several years ago on the level playing field, basically saying, no, you cannot provide broadband services. They can, but it's very limited in scope and the ability to do that. Counties have never been able to venture into this territory, and we are arguing just for the fact of getting into building the pipes. We want to drop fiber into the ground and then lease it to someone else to light it up. The fear, I believe, just to put it out there and be frank with you, is that the telecoms don't want that type of competition. So if you have smaller mom and pop providers of fiber connectivity, they would view that as possibly competition. That's just Kevin talking, but I think that is a pretty good assumption on my part, that that's what's going on. And so they have a pretty good amount of clout in the legislature, and they have slowed things down on that front. So I would ask of you to continue to talk about the need for broadband connectivity. No longer, and what our commissioners are telling us and telling other people is that no longer is it a nicety to be able to surf the web. You need it for public safety. You need it for economic development. Most importantly, your children need it to do their homework. And it's becoming more and more a digital divide in this state and across the country. So tell that story to your members, to your boards, and to your councils, because that's going to help come up through the legislature. The DSS, switching gears to the DSS directors, you might have heard about this, and Chris mentioned this, that there is a bill sponsored by Tamara Behringer of Wake County, 594, Senate Bill 594, that does a lot of great things. Actually, it does really good things as it relates to overhauling child welfare laws in the state of North Carolina, which is desperately needed. There's a section in that bill, however, that would regionalize the county DSS departments into 30 regions. How might this impact you? I'm guessing from an IT way is any interactions with NC Fast or anything that you might have to do with technology and case records and those types of things. I would start to think of it from that perspective. This approach is not the ideal approach, and that's what we've said to her and to members of the General Assembly. We normally oppose mandates to counties, especially in a regionalized system, something so important as child welfare. What the bill did not take into account is all of the other functions of the DSS office, adult services and other functions there. It's particularly only looking through the lens of child welfare. I've been meeting with Senator Behringer almost on a weekly basis, as well as Secretary Cohen over at the DHHS department. And I feel like we're heading in a good way to find an alternative solution, a plan B, than mandated regionalization. But you will see some reform, is my guess, in this area. We're working very hard so that it's not a mandate to regionalize, but there will be, my guess is, accountability standards coming to the DSS department, it's particularly in child welfare. And one final thing, again, I said I wouldn't go into all of it, but one final thing, electronic notice. This is an issue that I'm particularly passionate about. I've been working on it since I joined the association in '09, and I feel like we're the closest we've ever been on this particular issue. It's frustrating because we get really close, and then our own members with their local newspapers get, I guess, a little cold feet on it, because the press association will apply significant pressure. You know, it's the old adage, you don't pick a fight with somebody who buys 8 barrels. But I think I'm beginning to sense, and I would look at Chris on this, I'm beginning to sense that the tipping point is near. We have gained a lot of attraction, especially in the Senate this session. I don't know if it's going to make it through this session, but we're closer than we have been before. And this really would impact this group, because your website, electronic notice of information, which, by the way, it's all optional. It's not a mandate. It would be, if your county or city wanted to do this, it would be optional. But you're going to have to rethink about your websites and how you post information, how you distribute information, and do that. And as Chris said, there is a provision in the budget, in this bill, that's somewhat unique in that it would allow for a money-making opportunity or revenue-generating opportunity for the counties, so that they can basically offer those ads at a cost. It's kind of a reverse of what's going on now, which I really enjoy. But to take those dollars and put them towards public education. So a nice little new twist on a theme. So look out for electronic notice. Hopefully we're making a bigger push on that. Final thing, I'm going to move away from legislative stuff, and a key reason I wanted to be with you this morning and talk to you is about the North Carolina property tax system, NCPTS. Just by a quick show of hands, a little survey, how many folks are very knowledgeable about NCPTS? How many? Okay, there we go. Good. Awesome. I know Mike Taylor is. Okay, how many people think that I'm thinking about post-traumatic stress disorder? Okay. They could be one and the same, right, Mike? Yes, they could. Okay. Well, let me give you a real brief, and I promise to be brief, primer on NCPTS. So the North Carolina property tax system was established by the association in coordination with Wake County. And it was a software program written by Wake County to help with property tax, collection of property tax. And then that software package was given to the Association of County Commissioners so that it could be shared with other counties across the state. And a governance structure was put in place to create a steering committee of appointed members who were involved with NCPTS, those membership counties. And it operates by a pool fund. And we have a vendor. The vendor was called something else at the beginning. I forgot what it was, but it's now Farragut Systems. And it was Farragut before, but they changed their name. So there's a pool fund, people put pool funds in, and the idea is there's a basic property tax software package, and then the pool funds, they make changes to it through the pool funds, and they meet, this steering committee meets, which is led by one of your very own, Mike Taylor, is the chair, and by the way, has done an extraordinary job of leading this group. So the association has been responsible for this. This is an entity umbrellaed in the Association of County Commissioners. And I will admit to you that, and so it's been going on for 15 plus years or more. And what I will admit to you and take responsibility for is the association, I believe, has been sort of absent from the table of working with NCPTS. We've been there, but we've been very much in a stand-back role. And again, kudos to Mike Taylor for stepping up and being just an extraordinary leader through this process. About 18 months ago, we were approached. By the way, I've been in this new role for about 2.5 years. So about 18 months ago, we were approached, and Amy Basin is our Deputy Director General Counsel. So Amy has been taking lead on this project, and Amy and I have been working on this together. We were approached and asked, are you going to remain involved with NCPTS, or are you going to get out of it? This is from our member counties in NCPTS. And that was a valid question. There were people saying, are you going to do this or not? We made a determination in December of 2015 that, yes, we thought as the association it was our duty to make sure that we were involved in NCPTS and in a stronger way, because we are the advocate for all counties. And we need to be there to be your advocate if you're in NCPTS, between the vendor and advocate for the county. Kudos to Farragut Systems for stepping up during this period of time and acting basically as a project manager on NCPTS. But they're the vendor. Their job is to do that, right? And Mike's job is, and the board's job is to come up with, the changes that need to be done. And by the way, at this time, NCPTS has grown over the past 10 to 15 years. And as it grew, we had a 10-member board. It grew to around a 30-member board. Every time you bring a chair together, you just bring it up to the table. Come on, join the party. We'll make decisions together. If you've ever been a member of a 30-member board, you know that can be somewhat cumbersome. So we really dug into the issue, and we decided to become involved, and not only become involved, but be a key advocate on this. We saw 3 key areas that needed to be changed. Number 1, governance. It's difficult to govern a 30-member board, I can tell you, and make really critical decisions, especially on an IT basis. So we needed to adjust that. Number 2, the Farragut agreement, the vendor agreement, had been languishing for several years, so we needed to redo the agreement. And number 3, if we're going to get involved, the association, we're really going to get involved. We're going to put resources towards this. And we're going to hire someone to be a project manager that is an association staff person, and they will be the advocate, the translator between your county for your property tax system and your software program and the vendor. Everybody welcome to that thought process, because now Farragut is out of the mix of having to be both roles. We're going to be your advocate and look up for you and be that translator between your property tax office and your IT folks, your software, someone who speaks that language. So update on that. We had completed our interviews for that, and then the fire happened. That put a lot of things on pause. That was paused for some time. We're getting closer to a decision on that front, and I'm really excited about that. That's going to be a game changer, in my opinion. It's going to be a big deal when we have an association staff person on our team looking out for you and running the NCPTS project. The governance, or the agreement with Farragut, is hopefully in final stages. We've been sharing drafts just this week with Farragut, and that's going to be coming to a conclusion, I hope, in the next month. So that's on track. And the last thing is the governance structure. As I said, when we evaluated what was going on here, it became clearly apparent to me that the association is the entity that signs the contracts, the licensing agreements with the county. And when it became apparent to me that that was my name that I was signing and the liability was with the association, that we needed to really be involved with this. And it was the board of directors for the Association of County Commissioners that had the authority to restructure the steering committee. Now, remember, I took responsibility for being absent for about 10 years. And if you go to Mike and the group that's sitting there making all the decisions, and you say, well, we need to probably ratchet that down. Who likes their chair being taken away from a committee structure? So for the past year and a half, through Mike's leadership and through leadership of Amy Basin, I think we've come to a really good place that a lot of input was taken in, and we got to a place with the steering committee where we've restructured, and our board has adopted this past January a new governance structure that will be a 9-member board appointed by the association that takes into account committees both on the appraisal side and the taxing side, and we'll have larger user groups there at that level. And then final decisions will come up to that 9-member board that will they'll be reflective of small, medium, and large counties across the state. That will take effect later this year, or late summer. So we're on the right path, and our board approved that, like I said, in January. Sorry for all the detail on this, but it's a fairly important issue, I believe, in the property tax world. It will be in the IT world. I believe, as we progress on property tax software and systems. It's not the right fit for every county. Your county may be using this right now. Your county may be thinking about using it. There are other providers of this software out there, and it's up to you to decide what your counties and your leaders to do on that. But I'm here today to tell you that the Association of County Commissioners has a renewed commitment to this service, and if you want to talk to us about that, please do so. So that's a lot of information on property tax on a Friday morning at the beach. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it wasn't too painful. I think now we have 7 minutes left, and we can, Chris, whatever you'd like to do, we can happy to take a couple of questions if you'd like on any subject matter we've spoken about or not. And thank you so much for having us.
Taking the microphone to scale. Hey guys, let's take a break. Check out from the hotel. We'll reconvene at 10:45. Thank you very much.